Hello, my name is Alicia Poon, and I'm the director of the Indian Arts Research Center at the School for Advanced Research. If you're joining us in the present, you know that we're all self-quarantining in our homes due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If you're joining us from the future, well, that's why I'm coming to you from my front porch. Today, I'm so pleased and honored to be able to introduce our two interns who will be sharing about the research they've been working on while in residence at SAR. The ANRE internship is a 9-month-long residency at the School for Advanced Research that focuses on working with Indigenous communities and collections within the context of museums. As part of their internships, interns have the opportunity to work on their own scholarly research. Erin Monique Grant is a member of the Colorado River Indian Tribes and is from Tempe, Arizona. She's a recent graduate of the New School in New York, where she received her master's in the history of design and curatorial studies. She'll be presenting on Pueblo pottery from the Vilcek collection. Following Erin will be Amanda Sorensen, who's a recent graduate of the anthropology program at the University of British Columbia. Her presentation is titled Material Transformations, Cataloging the Blanket Leggings at NMNH, or the National Museum of Natural History. Please join me in welcoming Erin Monique Grant and Amanda Sorensen.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Erin Monique Grant. I am born and raised in Tempe, Arizona, and am a member of the Colorado River Indian Tribes out in Parker, Arizona. Today, I'll be talking about my internship project of writing Pueblo pottery descriptions and my journey to incorporate the Native voice into those descriptions. So my project began the summer before this internship when I learned that the School for Advanced Research and their Indian Arts Research Center entered a partnership with the New York City-based Vilcek Foundation to create an upcoming traveling exhibition on Pueblo pottery. Through that partnership, I was asked to do a side project as their website writer. This included me creating new web content and to write short descriptions about the Foundation's Pueblo pottery collection. This project ended up becoming a much longer process and a bit more complex than I originally anticipated. But it also gave me cultural and academic fulfillment that I will always be thankful for. And so today, I'm excited to share my project with you all today. So the Pueblo pottery collection I've been writing about consists of 46 pieces. The majority of them are water jars, and others are varying shapes of storage jars, shoulder jars, lidded jars, and dough bowls. Many of their homes are found in New Mexico. This includes the pueblos of Acoma, Cochiti, Kiowa, San Ildefonso, Tesuque, Santa Ana, Zia, and Zuni. 2 additional pieces come from Hopi in northern Arizona, and the last is Mongolian. Their date range includes 1100 CE, and then throughout the late 18th to 20th century. Some are as small as 6 inches in diameter and go up to 18 to 19 inches, and some are as tall as 18 inches in height. Additionally, some are likely culturally sensitive, whereas others were utilitarian or made for the early tourist and contemporary markets. So during the beginning of this project, the original project scope I was given in order to write the pottery descriptions was to consider what was the artist trying to convey and any other background information I could include. But when the research and writing process began, the description format quickly changed. The end product is a description format that consists of 3 parts. First is a factual description of a pot, such as listing its pueblo, whether it's polychrome, meaning multicolored, and then listing those colors in any painted decoration. Secondly, the body of the description visually describes the pot. And the last section points to any additional information, such as historical forms or interesting symbolisms. An important aspect for me during the research and writing process of these descriptions was to read and view other examples of how Pueblo pottery has been written. I wanted to understand common terms and phrases, but I also wanted to see which pottery characteristics are generally written about. So I spent a good time reading various books and going to museum exhibitions around the Santa Fe area. Right at home at the IARC, I also browsed the internal database to find similar pieces in SAR's collection and read what was described in their files. I was especially interested in readings about what was said during the tribal reviews because that meant all commentary was coming from specific Pueblo people. Nevertheless, an integral aspect to writing these descriptions was to reach out to community members to see how they talk about their own Pueblo's pottery. This is a topic I will touch on a bit later. So the first grouping of pottery I began to work with was Acoma Pueblo, which was mainly because out of the 46 pieces in the Foundation's collection, 15 are Acoma. One of the first pieces I began looking at ultimately became one of my favorites. It is an Acoma water jar, originally described with an abstract fish design. So here on the screen, you should see an Acoma polychrome oya, or water jar, 3-color, cream slipped with black and orange painted decoration. That previous sentence is actually the first part of my description for this piece. So I'll just say it again. Acoma polychrome oya, parentheses water jar, 3-color, cream slipped with black and orange painted decoration. Additionally, this jar is dated around the early 20th century. For the body of this description, I made the decision to focus on the center decoration that consists of an orange split square surrounded by attached hatcher triangles that can symbolize rain and connected black filled squares. Above and below the split square is not a fish design as the original description told, but instead are traditional bird motifs that grew into prominence during the 18th century. And this entire pattern rotates around the body of the water jar. Another piece I want to showcase comes from Acoma Pueblo as well and displays the classic parrot depiction. For the second water jar on screen, I will read a portion of the description I wrote. Acoma polychrome oya, parentheses water jar, 4-color, white slipped with red, orange, and black painted decoration. This 4-color polychrome jar centers on the popularized parrot form that stands beneath the swelling double-banded rainbow. A second parrot sits on the opposite side of the jar, and their colors interchange between red and orange. Besides the defining oya parentheses shape, water and rain imagery is illustrated by the placement of the macaw underneath the rainbow lines. Additionally, rain symbolism is depicted above his head with the flowing black triangular clouds. The parrot and other bird forms are set in a floral environment as they are surrounded by flowers, split leaves, and berries to eat from. Other noteworthy characteristics of this oya include the wavering black lined rim and its high base. Another vessel that I really enjoyed researching and writing about were bowls, specifically dough bowls. The first dough bowl I looked at was an Acoma polychrome dough bowl that was white slipped with black, red, and orange painted decoration. Although I spent time visually describing it like I've done with other bowls and jars, I enjoyed speaking about the vessel shape itself within my description. For instance, in this instance, much of my understanding of the bowl came from conversations with an Acoma member, but also IARC's tribal review commentary about dough bowls in general. Here, I will provide a portion of my description for this dough bowl. The vessel form of the dough bowl is distinct as it is typically made thicker than other jars, especially for the classic Acoma oya, or water jar, that is known for its thin walls. The thickness made the bowl sturdier and so likely aided the cooking usage and extended the life of the bowl. So going back to that Acoma water jar with the stylized bird forms, like many of the jars in the rest of the collection, It brought up issues and learning opportunities that I needed to confront in order to write descriptions from the best of my ability and to be respectful towards the pottery and its Pueblo. I wanted to ensure that all previous or original descriptions of the pieces are as accurate as they can be, such as when I realized that the bird design piece did not contain a fish decoration, but instead were birds, therefore the description and title changed. For me, that example emphasized the importance to have Native people speak about their own pottery, which brought me to another effort and lesson of mine, which was to center the Native voice. And by that, I mean to have the Native voice as an active role in these descriptions. So that meant I had to reconsider many of the books I had been reading into, some of which were authored by Euro-Americans, and so I had to critically think about what narrative and viewpoint they were conveying. For instance, some of these books talked about the origin of certain symbols on Pueblo pottery and argued that those designs originated in Europe, particularly Spain. Ultimately, that is one narrative with a certain viewpoint, but I also understand that certain Pueblos do not accept that Eurocentric narrative, which is incredibly valid as well, if not more. It is more important. This led me to be careful with the information and voice I was taking into my description writing. Another conflict I wrestled with during this project was the idea of me deciphering this pottery collection. It has never been my intention to decipher these pieces, mainly because it is not my place to do so. I work with the understanding that it is tribal and Pueblo elders and leaders who speak of such topics. I also recognize that information, especially about certain Pueblo pottery, is not meant for the general public. And even within those communities, in certain circumstances, one has to be invited to be given the knowledge. So as previously mentioned, an integral aspect to my project, and even to SAR's partnership with the Vilcek Foundation to create an upcoming exhibition, is community member input. Because of the nature of the Indian Arts Research Center, I knew that my project had to include commentary from Native people of the certain Pueblos I am writing about. So as I started with Acoma pottery from the Vilcek collection, I wanted to speak with an Acoma member right away. Luckily, on the IARC staff, there was someone from Acoma Pueblo who I first vetted all my questions to and respectfully received their input. I also wanted their comments on what I decided to focus on my descriptions and for them to bluntly tell me if I am mistaken in anything written. Most importantly, I wanted to hear how they describe their pottery because all Pueblos are not the same and their pottery is viewed and spoken about differently. I best experienced this when I moved onto pottery from San Ildefonso Pueblo and met with a community member who spoke more about the people than their symbolism and pottery forms. I also had the brief opportunity to speak with a potter from Zuni Pueblo, and he spoke of influences and trading designs when it came to his community's pottery. Ultimately, none of these communities are entirely synonymous, so I should be expected to write about them differently. And because I'm not spoken to community members with each of the Pueblos I am writing about, I am making the decision today to not speak about their pottery out of respect. When I reflect about this project and why it is important for me to do well with it, I think about my own family. I think about my family in the Colorado River Indian tribes. I think of those who have migrated to other Arizona reservations. But I also think about my maternal grandmother's parents who came from Second Mesa at Hopi. I think of all of them. Currently, I'm still working on this project. Some of my next steps are continuing to write and proof my descriptions, while also reaching out to community members as best as I can during this current time. Soon, I will be working on a summary of the entire collection, but I also hope to write specific Pueblo summaries because some of these single descriptions, in my opinion, do not give justice to these beautifully thriving communities. And so if you, the viewer, are interested in any recommendations about Pueblo pottery or are a scholar researching Pueblo pottery collections, I encourage everyone to seek out resources developed specifically by community members. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone at the Indian Arts Research Center and SAR for this opportunity to become the 2019 to 2020 ANRE intern. I also extend that appreciation to the Vilcek Foundation, who allowed me to explore these conflicts and questions within my project. And finally, if you're interested in helping some of the Pueblo communities I mentioned today who have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, please check out the Pueblo Relief Fund, which was created by the All Pueblo Council of Governors and the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. Their website is pueblorelieffund.org. Thank you and goodbye.
Hello, thank you all for tuning into our intern presentations. My name is Amanda and I'm one of the ANRE interns who's finishing up her internship at the end of May. And as I'm sure many of you know, the School for Advanced Research is close to the public and staff are working remotely. So I am presenting from my apartment and I hope you all are staying safe and working to keep others safe if you're able. So today I'm going to share with you about research that I've been thinking about for about 4 months total, about collectively. And during my research time here at SAR, I've gotten a bit caught up with a few writing projects that I started before the internship. So I was a bit ambitious about the amount of time that I had built into the internship for research and writing activities. So this work is quite preliminary and my thoughts about it are ever changing. So if anybody feels compelled to share feedback with me, I'd very much appreciate it. My email is on the first and last slide if you'd like to be in contact. So in the summer of 2017, I learned about a textile called the blanket leggings within the anthropology collections at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of Natural History. And throughout this presentation, I'll refer to this museum as NMNH. When I first learned about the blanket leggings, I was interested in how the various record information recording systems at the Smithsonian described the leggings and how they the information that they that the database and the catalog cards and the ledger books that they felt important to record about the blanket leggings. So I've not included a picture of the blanket leggings within my PowerPoint as I want to learn more about them before including some of the database photos. But the PowerPoint does include photos of the various descriptions and information that has been recorded about the blanket leggings by NMNH. So I focus on the way the blanket leggings are documented within within NMNH information management systems, examining the ways this museum has filtered and communicated information about this textile. So according to the catalog card and the database record, the blanket leggings are made from, quote, a black striped gray blanket formerly belonging to 2 moons of Rosebud River, Montana. And throughout my research, I've seen 2 moons spelled with and without an S, and Chief Del Knife College, which is located on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, they spell it without an S. So I'm following their lead and saying it without an S. Tu Moon was a Cheyenne leader who resisted colonization efforts by the U.S. military at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, which is also called the Battle of the Greasy Grass. The catalog card also indicated that these leggings were made in 1908 by Reverend Elias Washington John Lynn Smith, an Army chaplain who was stationed at Fort Keogh in what the US government then called Montana Territory. He was stationed there from 1880 to 1891, and an analysis of the legging material indicates that the original blanket could have been government issued for military personnel. So as of now, I do not know how Lynn Smith gained possession of the blanket. Did two men sell it to Lynn Smith? Did Lynn Smith simply take it? Was it a gift? While the description of the catalog card includes this background information, it also describes this textile as Cheyenne, and the leggings are housed with Cheyenne materials within Smithsonian Collections facilities. According to NMNH, Lynn Smith intended the blanket leggings to be, quote, an exact copy of the Indians' everyday leggings. The main research question I've been investigating in relation to the blanket leggings is concerned with the life of this textile since it arrived at the NMNH in July of 1956. Why are the blanket leggings cataloged the way that they are? What do these descriptions tell us about how NMNH understood the blanket leggings when they became a part of the anthropology collections? In my presentation last September, I discussed where I think the information on the catalog card was obtained by museum staff. In short, Lynn Smith tagged pieces within his collections, and these tags detailed when, where, from whom, and how he acquired a particular piece. So Lynn Smith's personal cataloging system also includes this information. And so I compared his personal catalog with some of the Smithsonian catalog cards for other pieces that he collected. And I found a significant overlap in the details included within each source. So the blanket leggings were a part of the collections at the Catholic University of America prior to 1956. And the archive staff at this institution recorded Lynn Smith's information from his tags into their database. So I hypothesize that the tags were either still attached to pieces within Lynn Smith's collections when the Catholic University of America donated the blanket leggings to the Smithsonian, or that the Catholic University of America shared this information with the Smithsonian when they donated the blanket leggings. So either way, Lynn Smith claimed to have turned the blanket into leggings or actually did. So I hypothesize that if he was being truthful, he drew on Northern Cheyenne and Crow legging designs popular during the years that he was collecting, since Northern Cheyenne and Crow Army Scouts and their families worked with and lived close to Lynn Smith while he was stationed at Fort Keogh. Before going further into the history of the blanket leggings, I want to share a quote about United States history from Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, a historian and an Indigenous scholar. She writes, "The history of the United States is a history of settler colonialism, the founding of a state based on the ideology of white supremacy, the widespread practice of African slavery, and a policy of genocide and land theft. Settler colonialism is marked by settlers coming with the intention of making a new home on indigenous lands, and the balance of those acts are, in the words of Hugh Tuck and Wing Yang, reasserted each day of occupation. The systems of power described by Dunbar Ortiz, Tuck, and Yang, and the violence inherent in those systems of power continue today, and they're important to understand as we can continue thinking about the blanket leggings." When creating this textile, specifically the blanket leggings, and not the actual material, but when turning the blanket into leggings, Lynn Smith drew upon Northern Cheyenne and Crow legging designs in an appropriative act, because, in the words of Anishinaabe poet and writer Lenore Keisha Tobias, it is an act, quote, taking from a culture that is not one's own intellectual property, cultural expressions and artifacts, history, and ways of knowledge. Adrienne Keene, a scholar of American Studies and a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, underscores the power dynamics implicit in appropriating acts, describing how an imbalance of power is always being exploited. She goes on to argue that appropriation can draw on and reproduce distorted and generalized perceptions of Indigenous peoples and their cultures, influencing how white and non-Indigenous folks holding these perceptions vote and create legislation, which in turn can impact the lives of Indigenous peoples. Tremendous change, violence, and resistance to settler colonialism occurred in what the US government called Montana Territory at the end of the 1800s, and the forces of this are continuing to be felt today. The United States was establishing the reservation system through force. Alden Bigman Jr., a historian from the Crow tribe of Indians, writes, "Every aspect of Crow life was attacked by US officials in an attempt to change the way Crows lived in the 1880s. The only Crow-white confrontation had been unsuccessful by Raps's tale and resulted in the government stepping up their efforts to replace Crow culture with Anglo culture. However, the social and familial system in place remained intact as Crows founded other avenues to celebrate their culture." Desi Small Rodriguez, a Northern Cheyenne woman, also speaks to resistance, and she includes this quote on the Project 562 Instagram. She states, "I've grown up knowing that we are here because 300 of our people made it back from Oklahoma. They escaped in the middle of winter after being forced into governmental Indian territory. They were dying of famine and disease, and so 2 of our chiefs, Dull Knife and Little Wolf, decided that they were going to make a run for freedom, and if they died along the way, at least they died trying to get home." It is this really amazing tale of survival, of what a people would do to get back home. Only 300 made it home. They were chased by the cavalry the entire time in the middle of winter for thousands of miles, and for me, this is not history, this is my reality. As Northern Cheyenne and Crow peoples resisted US settler colonialism then and continue to do so today, Lynn Smith thought it appropriate to lay claim to or to actually create clothing based on the designs of Northern Cheyenne and Crow makers. Lynn Smith cut the blanket and sewed them into leggings, in part to communicate information about himself. Or he stated that he did in order to communicate information by himself. He wanted to position himself as an expert on Northern Cheyenne and Crow fashion popular during the late 1800s. And the blanket leggings are a product of this. Deborah Root, an art historian, comments on cultural appropriation, and I find her thoughts aptly describe Lynn Smith's actions. They have, quote, "a performative quality that demands instant recognition and approval, constituting an endeavor to extend and underline the authority of the white person." As Lynn Smith intended the leggings to communicate this information, the catalog card is also an extension of his intentions. But before examining the card further, I overview a brief history of cataloging practices at NMNH. Any system that documents information about collections, any database or ledger book, like the examples I've included in this PowerPoint slide, any of these systems privileges certain types of information and certain perspectives. And the systems at the Smithsonian and NMNH are no exception. The Smithsonian Division of Ethnology, as the Department of Anthropology was then called, created their first catalog records in 1859, using the same catalog form Museum Assistant Secretary Spencer Baird created for the biological departments. Since 1855, the Smithsonian has reconfigured the form of the anthropology catalogs several times, moving from ledger books to catalog cards and finally to digital databases. However, the Smithsonian has changed the structure of these forms minimally, meaning the information that each form asks for, like catalog card or object name, all of this remains very similar. Jeffrey Bowker and Susan Lee Starr, scholars of information studies and library sciences, have asserted that every standard and each category within these information systems valorizes some point of view and silences another. Cataloging systems come from particular perspectives, sometimes problematic and racist perspectives, and they have agendas. Green states succinctly, data systems are never neutral. Western perspectives about the world, about what constitutes science and what constitutes knowledge, are valued within the NMNH information management systems. So There's information that is deemed relevant and information that is deemed irrelevant within the cataloging system. And this is the case for many other museum databases. And the perspectives of the Indigenous peoples who make and use similar materials as those within the NMNH collections are often not included within the structure of these information management systems. So keeping this background in mind, I turned to the description of the blanket leggings at the NMNH. What does the information on the catalog card convey? The catalog card description states, quote, made by Reverend E.W.J. Lindsmith in 1908 from black striped gray blanket formerly belonging to 2 Moons of Rosebud River, Montana, as an exact copy of the Indians' everyday leggings. As I described earlier, I hypothesized that this information came from a handwritten tag that Lindsmith attached to items included within his collection, and the museum cataloger translated this information into their own words, which were also perhaps filtered through information management processes at the Catholic University of America, as the blanket leggings lived there prior to NMNH. So I begin by focusing on the phrase, quote, as an exact copy of the Indians' everyday leggings, which conveys 2 ideas. First, Lindsmith and/or the cataloger's phrase obscures important cultural differences between sovereign Native American nations and groups, simplifying and generalizing identities and material cultures. In addition, this phrase generalizes Indigenous leggings designs as if there's only one design for quote-unquote everyday leggings. The descriptions of this textile encourage a certain understanding of the blanket leggings, one in which all Indigenous quote-unquote legging designs can be contained within one garment, an undue and problematic notion. I'm also suspicious of the phrasing everyday leggings, as it communicates how Lindsmith and of the cataloger perceived that there are types of leggings designs, and this also indicates a certain perspective that they carry with them to understand and interpret the blanket leggings. So Lindsmith made the blanket leggings, and in conjunction with the description that carries perhaps pieces of his perspectives and pieces of the museum cataloger's perspective, together, this textile and the description are tools of settler colonialism. They work in tandem to encourage a particular outlook, as the catalog card description encourages a simplified and generalized understanding of Native American peoples and leggings designs, essentializing many nations and groups of people into one with one quote-unquote everyday legging design. So these materials, both the blanket leggings and the original catalog card, give us some indication of how Lindsmith viewed the blanket leggings and how the cataloger viewed them. The publicly accessible digital database record includes more information about the leggings, but ultimately does not significantly change the description. This description is included in quotes under the notes section, and stating that this came from the catalog card. And the culture section of this record includes Cheyenne, Common Northern, semicolon, Anglo-American. Beyond the catalog card in the database, there are many more stories linked to the blanket leggings, information which the museum catalogers and the database management systems have not valued. And also Lindsmith did not value. And as such, the museum catalogers' decisions, the museum information management system, and Lindsmith's information included on his tags, all of this impacts the ways that readers and users perceive and understand the blanket leggings, Indigenous peoples, and Lindsmith. This information does not hold the only story about the blanket leggings. So as I wrap up this presentation, there are 2 points that I would like to make. The first one, catalog records represent associated collections, influencing how people frame any given piece. What do the descendants of Tumun think about the blanket leggings? Should they be at NMNH? If so, how would the descendants of Tumun and Northern Cheyenne and Crow people want the blanket leggings to be cataloged? What information could they want prioritized? Items like the blanket leggings are located in museums across North America. In what ways can catalog cards continue to cause harm to contemporary Indigenous peoples, encouraging generalized and stereotypic perceptions on the part of white and non-Indigenous people? To what extent do these descriptions continue to cause harm and continue to impact how database users understand materials like the blanket leggings? As museums are more frequently doing with exhibits, descendant communities should determine how collections are interpreted within databases. My research on this topic is also ongoing. My thoughts are and will continue to change as I continue. There are many other threads and other case studies at the NMNH that I am continuing to learn about. And if you have any questions or thoughts, or would you like to share with me, I would very much appreciate it. Feel free to shoot me an email. So on that note, thank you for listening. A thank you to Davina Two Bears, Bill Billick, Gwen Isaac, and Candace Green for all your guidance and support in researching this case study. A thank you to Carrie Beauchamp, and a big thank you to everybody at SAR and the IRC for creating space within my internship for me to keep researching. I've learned so much throughout this internship and basically something new every single day. So thank you to all the wonderful people that I got to meet while working at SAR.